The early season stage racing continued at full throttle today with the Vuelta a Andalucía, or the Ruta del Sol. This the 65th edition of the race, which now forms part of the UCI Pro Series, and there was no messing about. Today's 172.5 km stage into Grazalema took in 5 classified climbs, the last of which, Las Palomas, 12 k's long and averaging 6.5%. And that wasn't all. The finish line came at the end of a narrow 800 metre climb, partly on cobbles, at 7.6%. A big break went clear early in the day, consisting of 11 riders, but they were never allowed too far up the road. Big favourites for the stage included last year's winner Jakob Fuglsang, Marc Soler and Enric Mas of Movistar, Mikel Landa and Dylan Teuns of Bahrain McLaren, and Jack Haig, for whom Mitchelton Scott were working on the front of the bunch. Coming towards the final first category climb, and the leading group was already splitting up. Willie Smit, the South African from Burgos BH, joined by Moritz Lamertink of Circus Wanty Gobert. Behind them, Movistar, UAE Team Emirates and Bahrain McLaren were all making their way to the front to position their leaders for what would likely be the decisive climb. Going into it, our leading duo had been caught by 3 more men from the original breakaway, those 5 with a small lead of under 2 minutes with 22 kilometres of the stage remaining. 6 k's later though, and that lead had vanished. Lamertink the last to be caught, and just before that happened, there was a fresh attack from his teammate Loic Vliegen. He'd stay out front for quite some time, pulling out close to 20 seconds over the main favourites at one point, but his dreams were eventually shattered once the big guns made their moves. The first of those was Mikel Landa, in that familiar style, out of the saddle in the drops, and the only man who could match his pace eventually was Jakob Fuglsang. Both of those riders are making their competitive debut here in Andalucía for 2020, and it soon became clear that their winter training has gone very well indeed. They were head and shoulders above the rest, their gap continuing to climb all the way up the climb of Las Palomas. With 1.5 k's to go to the top of it, the duo were over 30 seconds clear of the next group on the road, which contained Haig, Bilbao, Dylan Teuns, Izagirre and De La Cruz amongst others. Mitchelton Scott new recruit Andre Zeitz, the man setting the pace on the front of that group. However, it wasn't as fast as the pace up front. The gap up to almost a minute as they finally crested the top, Fuglsang putting in a sneaky acceleration to take full mountain points. Behind, Haig was doing his best to close the gap, but Astana and Bahrain McLaren weren't letting him go anywhere. And it turned out that Fuglsang and Landa weren't just the best climbers, they were the best descenders too. Their gap had gone over the minute mark, and there was no doubt that one of them would take the stage win, barring any instance, with race motos. Fuglsang was clearly confident. He led from the front up the final climb towards the finish, and I think he and we were waiting for Landa to make his move. But in the end, it was the Dane who kicked first himself, and there was nothing that Landa could do to respond. In fact, clear daylight opened up between the pair, and in the space of just a few hundred metres, Fuglsang managed to take over 6 seconds on Mikel Landa. A really strong statement from the Dane of Astana, who had the best season of his career in 2019, and it looks as though he's on track to repeat that this year. First race, first win. Good signs too from Mikel Landa. He had a setback in training recently when he was knocked off his bike and ended up in hospital, so he'll be more than satisfied with his ride for second. And it was his teammate Dylan Teuns who took third, ahead of Jack Haig. There's the rest of the top 10. Bilbao, also of Team Bahrain McLaren, in 5th. Izagirre in 6th. Harper, De La Cruz, Van Hoek and Fernandez rounding out the top 10. And with no bonus seconds, that is a carbon copy of the overall standings. We've also got highlights of the Vuelta Algarve this week, so make sure you stay tuned for them.